The text came at 11:47 p.m. on a Tuesday, just as I was settling into my favorite recliner with a beer and the remote. Emergency business trip. Flying out early tomorrow. Don't wait up. Sarah. I stared at the glowing screen of my phone, feeling something cold settle in my stomach. In 15 years of marriage, my wife had never sent me a text that formal. Sarah always added hearts, or at least an XOXO, to her messages. This read like a memo from her law firm. I'm Danny Morrison, and I fix cars for a living. My hands are permanently stained with grease, my back aches from bending over engines all day, and I come home smelling like motor oil and brake fluid. Sarah, on the other hand, wears $1,000 suits and argues cases in air-conditioned courtrooms. We used to joke that we were Beauty and the Beast, except I was never sure which one of us was which. The house felt different with that text hanging in the air. Our ranch-style home in Millbrook, New York, had always been our sanctuary. We'd bought it 12 years ago when Sarah made partner at Harlan Steel & Associates. The mortgage payments were steep, but we managed. Now, sitting in the living room with its beige walls and family photos, everything seemed slightly off-kilter. I walked to the kitchen and grabbed another beer from the fridge. The magnetic calendar showed Sarah's schedule in her neat handwriting. Tomorrow was marked with Johnson deposition, 2 p.m., and dinner with Mom, 7 p.m. No mention of any business trip. My phone buzzed. Unknown number. Is this Daniel Morrison, Sarah Morrison's husband? Yeah. Who's this? This is Janet from Mr. Harlan's office. I'm sorry to call so late, but Sarah missed our emergency strategy meeting tonight for the Johnson case. Mr. Harlan is quite upset. Do you know where she might be? I felt my throat tighten. She's on a business trip. Left town for an emergency. That's odd. She didn't mention anything to us, and the Johnson case is her biggest this year. Are you sure? That's what she told me. After I hung up, I sat in the dark kitchen staring at my phone. Sarah's car wasn't in the garage. I'd assumed she'd driven to the airport, but now nothing made sense. I opened the Find My Phone app we'd installed years ago for emergencies. Sarah's location showed as Sunset Motor Lodge on Route 9, about 20 minutes away. The Sunset Motor Lodge was the kind of place you rented by the hour, not the night. I'd driven past it countless times on my way to work, always wondering who actually stayed there. Now I knew. I grabbed my keys and jacket. The October air was crisp, and the streets of Millbrook were empty except for a few teenagers hanging around the 7-Eleven. I drove slowly, my mind racing through possibilities. Maybe Sarah was meeting a client there. Maybe it was work-related. Maybe there was a perfectly reasonable explanation. The Sunset Motor Lodge looked exactly like what it was, a dump. Flickering neon sign, cracked parking lot, and rooms that probably hadn't been updated since the 1980s. Sarah's silver BMW was parked in front of room 14, next to a black Audi I didn't recognize. I sat in my truck for 10 minutes, engine running, trying to decide what to do. Part of me wanted to storm up to that door and demand answers. The smarter part told me to gather information first. In my line of work, you learn to diagnose problems before you start swinging wrenches. I got out and walked quietly to the Audi. The license plate read LAWYR1. Cute. I popped the hood as quietly as I could and yanked out the spark plug wires, shoving them in my jacket pocket. Then I took a piece of paper from my truck and wrote, "Have a fun night, Sarah. We'll talk tomorrow. Danny." I slipped the note under her windshield wiper and drove home. The house felt like a tomb when I got back. I poured myself a whiskey and sat at the kitchen table, staring at Sarah's coffee mug from this morning. It still had her lipstick stain on the rim. The same shade I'd noticed was missing from her makeup bag upstairs. My phone buzzed with a text from Sarah. "Flight delayed. We'll call tomorrow." I almost laughed. She was still playing the game, even now. I typed back, "Safe travels. Love you too." Then I poured another whiskey and tried to figure out how long my wife had been lying to me. I must have dozed off at the table because the next thing I knew, sunlight was streaming through the kitchen window and my neck felt like I'd been hit by a truck. My phone showed 3 missed calls from Sarah and 2 voicemails. "Danny, my phone lost charge and I forgot my charger. The hotel phone is awful. I'll call you later today." The second message. "Something's wrong with Ben's car. We're stuck at the hotel. We'll figure it out and call you. Ben." So now I had a name. I made coffee and tried to think clearly. Sarah would be home soon, probably with some elaborate story about her business trip. She'd expect me to believe it, to play the role of the trusting husband. But something had shifted in me during that long night. I wasn't ready to pretend anymore. My phone buzzed with an email from an address I didn't recognize. Check your inbox. You're not the only one watching. Attached was a photo of me standing next to the black Audi at the motel, clearly taken from across the parking lot. My face was visible in the streetlight, and the timestamp showed it was taken just minutes after I'd arrived. Someone else had been there. Someone else was watching my wife cheat on me, and now they were watching me too. I deleted the email and tried to trace the sender, but it was from one of those anonymous email services. Whoever sent it knew how to cover their tracks. The front door opened, and Sarah walked in looking perfectly composed. Her hair was styled, her makeup flawless, her business suit wrinkle-free. She looked like she'd just stepped out of a boardroom, not a cheap motel. "Hey, baby," she said, kissing my cheek. "Sorry about the confusion yesterday. Everything worked out fine." "How was your trip?" "Exhausting. Boring client meetings, terrible hotel food. I'm just glad to be home." She was good. If I hadn't seen her car at the motel myself, I might have believed her. Sarah had always been an excellent liar. It's what made her such a successful lawyer. "How's the Johnson case going?" "Fine." "Why?" "Janet called last night looking for you. Said you missed some important meeting." For just a second, I saw something flicker across her face. Fear, maybe, or annoyance at being caught in the lie. But she recovered quickly. "Oh, that. I called Janet this morning and straightened everything out. Miscommunication about the schedule." I nodded and sipped my coffee. "Good. Wouldn't want you to get in trouble with Harlan." Sarah grabbed a yogurt from the fridge and checked her phone. "I need a shower and get to the office. Big day today." As she headed upstairs, I heard her making a phone call. The words were muffled, but the tone was urgent. She was doing damage control. I finished my coffee and got ready for work. At Morrison's Auto Repair, my own shop that I'd built from nothing over the past 8 years, I could think clearly. The familiar smell of motor oil and the sound of pneumatic tools helped calm my mind. My best friend Ricky owned the boxing gym next door. He was a former Golden Gloves champion who turned to training after a bad knee injury ended his fighting career. We'd been friends since high school, and he was one of the few people who knew the real me. "You look like hell," Ricky said when I walked into his gym during lunch break. "Thanks for the pep talk." "Seriously, what's wrong?" "You've got that look." "What look?" "The same look you had right before you punched Tommy Castellano in high school." I told Ricky about the motel, the mysterious email, and Sarah's lies. He listened without interruption, occasionally nodding or shaking his head. "So what are you going to do?" he asked when I finished. "I don't know yet. Part of me wants to confront her. Part of me wants to hire a private investigator." "And the other part?" "The other part wants to find out who Ben is and have a conversation with him." Ricky raised an eyebrow. "What kind of conversation?" "The kind that starts with me asking politely and ends with him understanding that he's made a serious mistake." "Danny, you can't go around beating people up. This isn't high school." "Who said anything about beating anyone up? I just want to talk." But even as I said it, I could feel something dark stirring in my chest. For 15 years, I'd been the good husband. I'd worked hard, paid the bills, and trusted my wife completely. I'd played by the rules, while she was apparently rewriting them. That afternoon, I did some research. Lawyer 1 was registered to Benjamin Steele, age 34, address on Elm Street in the nice part of town. Steele, as in Harlan Steele and Associates. Sarah was sleeping with her business partner. I drove past Ben's condo complex after work. It was one of those modern developments with names like luxury living and amenities like a fitness center and concierge service. His black Audi was in the parking lot, and I could see lights on in what I assumed was his unit on the 3rd floor. Benjamin Steele had everything I didn't. Money, status, and apparently my wife. He probably saw me as some working-class nobody who didn't deserve someone like Sarah. Maybe he was right, but he was about to learn that this working-class nobody wasn't going to back down. I sat in my truck for an hour, watching his building and thinking about my next move. Sarah was working late again, or so she said. Our daughter Emily was at her friend's house for a sleepover. I had time to plan. My phone buzzed with another anonymous email. Same time tomorrow night. Room 18 this time. Thought you should know. Someone was definitely watching Sarah and Ben, and they wanted me to know about it. But who? And why? I drove home to our empty house and poured myself a drink. Tomorrow night, I'd be ready. Tomorrow night, I'd start getting some answers. The next evening, I parked across the street from the Sunset Motor Lodge at 8:30 p.m. Sarah had texted me at 6 p.m. Working late on depositions. Don't wait up. Same script, different night. Room 18 was at the far end of the building, partially hidden by an overgrown hedge. Perfect for privacy, terrible for my line of sight. I was trying to figure out a better position when someone tapped on my passenger window. Mind if I join you? The woman was maybe 40, with short blonde hair and tired eyes. She was wearing jeans and a leather jacket, and she looked like she hadn't slept much lately. I hesitated for a moment, then unlocked the door. "I'm Jenna Walsh," she said, sliding into the passenger seat. Sarah's best friend. I knew Jenna. She'd been to our house dozens of times over the years, had been Sarah's maid of honor at our wedding. She was married to a guy named Mike, who worked in insurance, and they lived about 10 minutes from us in a colonial with a perfect lawn. "What are you doing here, Jenna?" "Same thing you are, I think, trying to figure out what the hell our spouses are up to." "Mike's here too?" She laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Mike's been having an affair for 6 months. With Sarah." The world tilted sideways. "What?" "I hired a private investigator 3 weeks ago. Mike and Sarah have been meeting here twice a week since August. I thought you knew." "No, There's a guy named Ben Steele. I saw his car here 2 nights ago." Jenna frowned. "Ben Steele? Sarah's business partner?" "Danny, Ben's been out of town all week at a conference in Chicago. I know because Mike mentioned it. Said Sarah was stressed about covering his cases. I felt like I was drowning." "Then whose car did I see?" "Probably a rental. Mike's been using rentals lately because he was paranoid about me tracking his car." We sat in silence for a few minutes, both processing this new information. If Jenna was right, then Sarah wasn't having an affair with Ben. She was having an affair with her best friend's husband. And Jenna had been watching them for weeks. "You sent me those emails," I said. "I thought you deserved to know. Sarah's my friend, but what she's doing to you, it's not right." "How long have you known?" "I suspected something was off about 6 weeks ago. Mike was acting weird, staying late at work, being secretive with his phone. Then I found hotel receipts in his jacket pocket. The PI confirmed it 2 weeks later. A silver BMW pulled into the motel parking lot, followed by a dark blue sedan. Even from across the street, I could see Sarah's distinctive profile as she got out of her car. The man who got out of the sedan was tall and thin with graying hair. Mike Walsh, who I'd shared barbecues and birthday parties with for over a decade. "There they are," Jenna said quietly. I watched my wife of 15 years walk hand in hand with my friend's husband toward room 18. They looked comfortable together. Familiar. This wasn't a new thing. "How long do you think this has been going on?" I asked. "Longer than 6 months. The way they move together, the way they look at each other. I'd guess at least a year. A year." While I was working 60-hour weeks to keep up with our mortgage and Emily's private school tuition, Sarah was playing house with Mike Walsh. While I was trusting her completely, she was lying to my face every single day. "What are you going to do?" Jenna asked. "I don't know yet." "What about you?" "I've already filed for divorce. Mike doesn't know yet. He'll be served papers Monday morning. I'm taking the house, half his retirement, and full custody of the kids." "Just like that?" "Just like that. I'm not interested in working things out or going to counseling. He made his choice." I admired her decisiveness. Jenna had always been the practical one in her marriage, the one who balanced the checkbook and remembered to pay the bills. She approached this betrayal the same way she probably approached everything else, methodically and efficiently. "Sarah doesn't know you know?" she asked. "Not yet." "Good. That gives you an advantage. She's going to keep lying as long as she thinks she's getting away with it." We watched the motel for another hour, but nothing happened. No dramatic confrontations, no tearful confessions. Just 2 cheaters hiding in a cheap room while their spouses sat in a truck across the street, trying to figure out how their lives had fallen apart. "I should go," Jenna finally said. "Mike thinks I'm at book club." "Jenna, wait. Why did you tell me? You could have just handled your own situation and left me out of it." She paused with her hand on the door handle. "Because you're a good guy, Danny." You deserve better than this. And because Sarah's been telling people that you're the problem in your marriage. What do you mean? She's been saying you're controlling, that you don't support her career, that you're holding her back. She's been setting up the narrative for months, making herself look like the victim. After Jenna left, I sat alone in my truck, processing everything I'd learned. Sarah wasn't just cheating. She was planning her exit strategy. She was positioning herself as the wronged party, probably setting up for a divorce where she'd get sympathy from friends and colleagues. I drove home and found Sarah's car in the garage. She was in the kitchen, still in her work clothes, heating up leftover Chinese food. "Hey, baby," she said, kissing my cheek. "How was your day?" "Fine. Long day at the office? You know how it is. Depositions ran late. Then I had to catch up on paperwork." She was so good at lying that I almost believed her myself. If I hadn't seen her walk into that motel room 2 hours ago, I would have bought the whole performance. "I ran into Jenna at the grocery store," I said, watching her face carefully. "Oh? How's she doing?" She seemed stressed. Said Mike's been working a lot of late nights lately. Sarah's expression didn't change, but I saw her hand tighten slightly around her fork. "That's too bad. Mike works too hard." "Yeah, he does." We ate dinner in relative silence, making small talk about Emily's school and my work at the shop. It felt surreal, sitting across from my wife and pretending everything was normal while knowing she'd been in bed with another man just hours earlier. After dinner, Sarah went upstairs to shower. I heard her on the phone again, speaking in low tones. When she came back down, she was wearing her favorite pajamas, the silk ones I bought her for Christmas. "I'm exhausted," she said, curling up next to me on the couch. "This case is draining me." I put my arm around her, smelling her shampoo and feeling the warmth of her body against mine. For a moment, I almost forgot about the motel and Mike Walsh. This was my wife, the woman I'd fallen in love with in college, the mother of my daughter. We'd built a life together. But then I remembered Jenna's words. She's been setting up the narrative for months. "Sarah, are you happy?" "What do you mean?" "I mean with us, with our marriage. Are you happy?" She turned to look at me, and for a second, I saw something genuine in her eyes. Guilt, maybe, or regret. "Of course I'm happy. Why would you ask that?" "I just want to make sure we're okay. Sometimes I feel like we're drifting apart." "We're fine, Danny. Just busy with work and Emily and everything else. It's normal for couples our age." But as she said it, she was already pulling away from me, creating distance. She grabbed her phone and started scrolling through emails. "I need to review some documents for tomorrow," she said. "I'll be up late." She kissed the top of my head and headed for her home office. I sat alone on the couch, listening to her typing and occasionally talking on the phone. She was probably coordinating with Mike, planning their next rendezvous. I went to bed around midnight, but Sarah never came upstairs. I woke up at 6 a.m. to find her asleep on the office couch, still in her pajamas, surrounded by legal papers. It was a perfect alibi. The dedicated lawyer who worked so hard she fell asleep at her desk. Over the next few days, I started paying closer attention to Sarah's patterns. She was getting texts at odd hours that she'd quickly delete. She was taking phone calls outside, or in her office, with the door closed. She was working late 3 nights a week, always on nights when Mike was supposedly working late too. I also started noticing things about our friends and neighbors. At Emily's school soccer game, I overheard 2 other mothers talking about poor Sarah and how I was probably having a midlife crisis. At the hardware store, Bill Kowalski, who lived down the street, made a comment about me needing to appreciate what I had at home. Sarah's narrative was working. She was painting herself as the long-suffering wife of a difficult husband. And people were buying it. When the divorce came, and it was definitely coming, she'd have public opinion on her side. But I was learning, too. I was learning that my wife was a master manipulator who'd been playing a long game. I was learning that some of my friends and neighbors were willing to judge me based on gossip, and I was learning that I had a capacity for anger I'd never fully explored. The old Danny Morrison would have confronted Sarah directly, would have tried to work things out through honest conversation and maybe marriage counseling. But the old Danny Morrison was gone. In his place was someone harder, someone who understood that playing by the rules was a sucker's game when your opponent was cheating. I started making plans of my own. The boxing gym became my refuge. Every day after work, I'd spend an hour hitting the heavy bag, working out my frustration and anger in a more productive way than brooding at home. Ricky noticed the change in my intensity. "You're hitting that bag like it owes you money," he said one Thursday evening. "Maybe it does." "Danny, I've been thinking about what you told me, about Sarah and Mike. You need to be smart about this." "What do you mean?" "I mean, don't do anything stupid. Don't confront them, don't trash his car, don't make any dramatic gestures. If you want to come out of this in one piece, you need to play it like Sarah's playing it, strategically." Ricky was right, but strategy wasn't my strong suit. I was a mechanic, not a lawyer. I fixed problems by taking them apart and rebuilding them, not by manipulating people and playing mind games. "What would you do?" I asked. "I'd document everything. I'd protect my assets, and I'd make sure that when the truth came out, I wasn't the one who looked like the bad guy." That weekend, Emily came home from a sleepover at her friend Madison's house with interesting gossip. At 15, she was plugged into the social media ecosystem of Millbrook in ways that adults couldn't fully comprehend. "Madison's mom said Mrs. Walsh is getting divorced," Emily announced over breakfast. Sarah nearly choked on her coffee. "What? Jenna's getting divorced?" "Yeah. Apparently she caught Mr. Walsh cheating or something. Madison said her mom was really upset about it." That's terrible," Sarah said, but I could see the wheels turning in her head. If Jenna was divorcing Mike, then their affair was about to become public knowledge. "I should call Jenna," Sarah said. "She must be devastated." After Emily left to meet friends at the mall, Sarah went into her office and closed the door. I could hear her making phone calls, her voice urgent and worried. She was probably warning Mike that Jenna knew about the affair. I used the opportunity to do some investigating of my own. Sarah's laptop was password protected, but she'd been using the same password for years. Emily's birthday plus our anniversary year. Not very creative for someone so smart. Her email revealed a treasure trove of information. There were dozens of messages between Sarah and Mike over the past 8 months, ranging from sweet and romantic to explicit and graphic. They'd been planning weekend getaways, discussing their future together, and yes, talking about how to handle their respective spouses when the time came to end their marriages. One email from Sarah to Mike, dated 3 weeks earlier, was particularly illuminating. "Danny's been asking questions about my schedule lately. I think we need to be more careful. Maybe we should cool things off for a while until I can figure out the best way to handle the divorce. I want to make sure I get the house and primary custody of Emily. My lawyer says the key is documenting a pattern of emotional abuse or neglect." Emotional abuse. She was planning to accuse me of emotional abuse to gain advantage in a divorce? I thought about all the times over the past few months when Sarah had seemed to be baiting me, trying to get me to lose my temper or say something she could use against me later. I forwarded the most damning emails to a new account I'd set up, then deleted the forwarded messages from her sent folder. If Sarah wanted to play games, I'd make sure I had ammunition. When Sarah came out of her office an hour later, she looked shaken. "I just talked to Jenna," she said. "She's really going through a rough time. Mike, apparently, has been having an affair for months." "That's awful. Do we know who with?" "Some woman from his work, I think." Jenna didn't want to talk about the details. Sarah was a better liar than I'd given her credit for. She was looking me right in the eye and spinning a completely false story without even blinking. "We should do something for Jenna," I said. "Maybe have her over for dinner this week." "Oh, I don't think she's ready for that yet. She's pretty fragile right now." Of course she wasn't ready. Having Jenna over for dinner would mean risking exposure if Jenna decided to tell me the truth about who Mike was really sleeping with. That afternoon, I drove to Jenna's house. Her car was in the driveway, and I could see her in the front yard, pulling weeds from her flower bed with more aggression than was strictly necessary. "Hey, Jenna." She looked up, shading her eyes from the sun. "Danny, what brings you by? I heard about you and Mike." "I'm sorry." "Thanks. It's been a long time coming, honestly. Sarah said Mike was having an affair with someone from work." Jenna's expression hardened. "Is that what she said?" "Yeah." She seemed pretty upset about it. "I'll bet she did." Jenna stood up, brushing dirt off her knees. "Danny, can I ask you something?" "Sure. What are you planning to do about Sarah?" "I'm still figuring that out." "Well, when you do figure it out, remember that she's been planning her exit strategy for a long time. Don't let her get ahead of you." Monday morning brought news that spread through Millbrook like wildfire. Mike Walsh had been served with divorce papers at his office, and by lunchtime, everyone in town seemed to know about it. I heard about it from 3 different customers at the shop before noon. Sarah called me around 1 p.m., her voice tight with stress. Did you hear about Mike and Jenna? Yeah, it's all over town. Poor Jenna. Danny, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest with me. Okay. Has anyone said anything to you about Mike's affair? About who he was sleeping with? No. Why? No reason. I'm worried about Jenna. She's been acting strange lately. Sarah was fishing, trying to figure out how much I knew. The fact that she was worried meant that her carefully constructed plan was starting to fall apart. That evening, Sarah worked late again, or claimed to. I used the time to visit Ben Steele's condo complex. I'd been thinking about my earlier assumption that Ben was Sarah's lover, and I wanted to confirm that he'd really been out of town when I saw Sarah at the motel. The concierge at Ben's building was a chatty guy in his 60s who seemed happy to have someone to talk to. Mr. Steele? Oh yeah, he's been in Chicago for the past 2 weeks. Some big legal conference. He's not back until Thursday. So Jenna had been right. Ben wasn't Sarah's lover. Mike was. But I'd jumped to conclusions based on the license plate and Sarah's work relationship with Ben. It was a reminder that I needed to be more careful about my assumptions. When Sarah got home that night, she seemed distracted and anxious. She barely touched her dinner and kept checking her phone every few minutes. Everything okay? I asked. Fine. Just a lot going on at work. Anything I can help with? No, it's just complicated legal stuff. You wouldn't be interested. There it was again, the subtle dismissal, the implication that I was too stupid or unsophisticated to understand her world. It was a pattern I'd been blind to for years, but now I couldn't unhear it. After dinner, Sarah announced that she needed to run some errands. She was gone for 3 hours, and when she came back, she smelled like cologne that wasn't mine. Where did you go? I asked. Grocery store. Then I stopped by the office to pick up some files. But there were no groceries, and she wasn't carrying any files. That night, I lay in bed listening to Sarah breathe beside me, trying to remember when things had started going wrong between us. Had there been signs I'd missed? Red flags I'd ignored? Or had she always been this good at deception? I thought about Emily, sleeping down the hall, oblivious to the fact that her parents' marriage was disintegrating. She was starting her sophomore year of high school, dealing with all the usual teenage drama. How would she handle a divorce? How would she handle learning that her mother was a cheater and her father was... what? What was I becoming? The old Danny Morrison would have been devastated by Sarah's betrayal. He would have been hurt and confused and probably willing to do anything to save his marriage. But the old Danny Morrison was disappearing, replaced by someone harder and more calculating. I was learning to think like Sarah thought, to plan like she planned, and I was discovering that I was better at it than I'd expected. The next morning I made a decision. I was going to stop reacting to Sarah's moves and start making some moves of my own. If she wanted to play games, I'd show her how games were really played. By Wednesday, the Mike Walsh divorce had become the biggest gossip story in Millbrook, since the mayor got caught embezzling from the town's Christmas fund. I heard different versions of the story from customers, neighbors, and even the guy who delivered parts to my shop. The most interesting version came from Rita Kowalski, Bill's wife, who stopped by the shop to get her oil changed. I heard Mike was having an affair with that new secretary at his office, she said. You know, the young blonde one with the fake boobs. Really? That's what Carol Henderson told me. But then Mary Sullivan said she heard it was someone from his gym. And Janet Morrison, no relation to you, I assume, said she thought it might be someone from his church. The rumors were flying in every direction except the right one. No one suspected Sarah, which meant her cover was still intact. But it also meant that Mike was taking all the heat, while Sarah remained the sympathetic friend of the wronged wife. That evening, I decided it was time to have a conversation with Mike Walsh. Mike worked at Millbrook Insurance Agency, a small firm that handled auto and homeowner policies for most of the town. The office was in a converted Victorian house on Main Street, and Mike usually stayed late on Wednesdays to catch up on paperwork. I parked across the street at 7 p.m. and waited. Mike's car was the only one in the small parking lot behind the building. At 7:30, the lights in the front office went out, but I could see a glow from the back room where Mike had his desk. I walked around to the back entrance and knocked. "We're closed," Mike called out. "It's Danny Morrison. I need to talk to you." There was a long pause before the door opened. Mike looked terrible, unshaven, rumpled, with dark circles under his eyes. He'd lost weight since I'd last seen him, and his usually neat appearance was disheveled. "Danny, what's up?" Can I come in? We need to talk. Mike hesitated, then stepped aside. His office was a mess. Papers scattered everywhere, empty coffee cups, and what looked like the remains of several fast food meals. Rough week? I asked. You could say that. I assume you heard about Jenna filing for divorce. Yeah, the whole town's talking about it. Mike slumped into his desk chair and rubbed his face. I messed up, Danny. I really messed up. You want to tell me about it? What's to tell? I'm a middle-aged idiot who threw away a good marriage for what? A few months of excitement? With who? Mike looked at me sharply. Why do you want to know? Because the woman you threw away your marriage for is my wife. The color drained from Mike's face. For a moment, I thought he might deny it or try to bluff his way out. Instead, he just nodded slowly. How long have you known? About a week. How long has it been going on? Since last spring, maybe April or May. 8 months. They've been lying to me for 8 months. How did it start? Mike was quiet for a long time, staring at his hands. When he finally spoke, his voice was barely above a whisper. Sarah came to me about updating your life insurance policy. We got to talking, and she mentioned that things were rough at home. Said you'd been distant, working all the time, not paying attention to her. And you believed that? I wanted to believe it. She's an amazing woman, Danny. Beautiful, smart, successful. I couldn't believe she was interested in someone like me. So you decided to help her with her marital problems by sleeping with her. It wasn't like that. At least, it didn't start that way. We were just talking at first, meeting for coffee, then drinks. She said she felt like you didn't appreciate her, that you saw her as just a wife and mother, instead of a person. I felt anger rising in my chest, but I kept my voice level. And then what? Then one night we had too much to drink, and it happened. We both said it was a mistake, that it couldn't happen again. But it did happen again. And again. Where? Different places. Hotels mostly. Sometimes at my apartment when Jenna was out of town visiting her sister. The Sunset Motor Lodge? Mike nodded miserably. Sarah said it was safer than the nice hotels. Less chance of running into someone we knew. How did Jenna find out? She hired a private investigator, got photos, credit card records, everything. She confronted me last Monday with a folder full of evidence. I couldn't deny it. Does she know it's Sarah? Yeah, she knows everything. We sat in silence for a few minutes. Mike looked like he wanted to crawl under his desk and disappear. I felt a strange mix of anger and pity for him. What happens now? I asked. I don't know. Jenna wants half of everything, plus alimony. My lawyer says I'll probably lose the house. The kids. Jesus, the kids hate me, Danny. My own children look at me like I'm a monster. What about Sarah? What are her plans? She wants to end things. Says it's too risky now that Jenna knows. She's worried about her reputation, her career. And you're okay with that? Mike laughed bitterly. Do I have a choice? Sarah made it clear that I was just a temporary distraction. She never had any intention of leaving you for me. That stung more than I'd expected. Not because I was jealous, but because it confirmed what I'd suspected. Sarah saw both Mike and me as disposable. She'd used Mike for excitement and validation, and she'd been planning to discard me when it became convenient. Mike, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest. Okay. Has Sarah ever talked about divorcing me? About how she'd handle it? Mike was quiet for a long time. Then he nodded. She said she was waiting for the right time. Said she wanted to make sure she got custody of Emily and kept the house. She was worried that if she filed for divorce while she was having an affair, it might hurt her case. Did she ever mention accusing me of abuse? Mike's eyes widened. How did you... Yes. She said her lawyer told her that documenting emotional abuse would give her an advantage in custody proceedings. And you believed I was abusing her? I wanted to believe it. It made me feel less guilty about what we were doing. But honestly, Danny, you're one of the most decent guys I know. I never really believed you'd hurt Sarah. But you slept with my wife anyway. Yeah, I did. I stood up to leave. Mike looked up at me with desperate eyes. Danny, what are you going to do? I don't know yet. Are you going to tell Sarah that you know? Eventually. When? When the time is right. I left Mike sitting in his messy office, looking like a man who'd lost everything and was just beginning to understand the full scope of his losses. In a way, I felt sorry for him. He'd been played by Sarah just as much as I had, just differently. But my sympathy had limits. Mike was a grown man who'd made his own choices. He'd betrayed his wife, his children, and his friend for a few months of excitement. Now he was paying the price. I drove home thinking about what I'd learned. Sarah had been planning to leave me for months, maybe even years. She'd been crafting her story, positioning herself as the victim of an emotionally neglectful husband. She'd used Mike for attention and reassurance, then discarded him when he no longer served her purpose. Most importantly, she thought she was smarter than everyone else. She thought she could manipulate and control the situation, that she could orchestrate her exit from our marriage on her own terms. She was about to learn how wrong she was. When I got home, Sarah was in the living room watching TV. She looked up when I walked in and I saw something flicker across her face. Guilt, maybe. Or fear. "Where have you been?" she asked. "Had a drink with Ricky. You smell like cigarettes." Ricky was smoking. She nodded and turned back to the TV, but I could see the tension in her shoulders. She was suspicious, worried that I was starting to figure things out. "How was your day?" I asked. "Fine. Busy. Any word on how Jenna's doing?" "I haven't talked to her today. I'm trying to give her some space." More lies. I was beginning to wonder if Sarah was capable of telling the truth about anything. "I was thinking we should plan a vacation," I said. "Maybe take Emily somewhere nice for spring break." Sarah looked at me with surprise. "A vacation?" "Yeah. I feel like we haven't spent enough quality time together as a family lately. Maybe we could go to Florida or take a cruise." "That sounds nice, but I'll have to check my schedule. I've got some big cases coming up." "Of course you do." I kissed the top of her head and headed upstairs. As I brushed my teeth, I could hear Sarah on the phone downstairs, speaking in low, urgent tones. She was probably calling Mike, warning him that I'd been asking questions. But Mike wouldn't tell her about our conversation. He was too ashamed, too broken, to admit that he'd confessed everything to me. He'd probably just assure her that everything was fine, that I didn't suspect anything. Sarah would believe him because she wanted to believe him. She needed to believe that her plan was still on track, that she was still in control. Tomorrow, I'd start showing her just how out of control things really were. The next morning, I woke up early and made coffee while Sarah was still sleeping. I sat at the kitchen table with my laptop, reviewing the emails I'd copied from Sarah's account and thinking about my next moves. Sarah came downstairs at 7 a.m., already dressed for work in a charcoal gray suit that probably cost more than I made in a week. "You're up early," she said, pouring herself coffee. "Couldn't sleep." "Everything okay?" "Just thinking about things." She sat down across from me, and for a moment she looked like the woman I'd married, concerned, caring, present. But I knew it was just another performance. "Danny, I've been thinking about what you said last night, about taking a vacation." "Yeah?" "Maybe we should talk about us, about our marriage. I feel like we've been drifting apart lately." Here it comes, I thought, the setup. She was going to start the conversation that would eventually lead to her asking for a divorce. She'd probably suggest marriage counseling first, go through the motions of trying to save our relationship, then reluctantly conclude that we were incompatible. "What do you mean?" I asked. "I mean we barely talk anymore. We're like roommates instead of husband and wife. Don't you feel it?" "I feel like you're never here." "I'm working, Danny. I'm trying to build my career." "Is that what you call it?" Something shifted in her expression. "What's that supposed to mean?" "Nothing. Just that you seem to be working a lot of late nights lately." "That's what lawyers do. You know that." "Right." Sarah studied my face, trying to read my expression. I kept it neutral, giving her nothing to work with. "I have to go," she said finally. "We'll talk more tonight." After she left, I called in sick to work and drove to Jenna's house. She answered the door in yoga pants and an oversized sweatshirt, looking like she hadn't slept much. "Danny, what's up?" "I talked to Mike last night." "And?" "He told me everything." Jenna stepped aside and let me in. Her house was immaculate as always, but there were moving boxes stacked in the hallway and gaps on the walls where family photos used to hang. "How are you holding up?" I asked. I'm surviving. Some days are better than others. What's your timeline? Mike moves out this weekend. The divorce should be final in a few months. And then what? Then I start over. New house, new life, new everything. We sat in her living room, surrounded by the remnants of her marriage. Wedding photos were gone, but there were still indentations in the carpet where furniture used to be. Jenna, I need to ask you something. Shoot. Why did you help me? You could have just handled your own divorce and stayed out of my situation. She was quiet for a long time, staring out the window at her perfectly manicured lawn. Because Sarah's been playing the victim, she said finally. She's been telling people that you're the problem in your marriage, that you don't appreciate her, that you're holding her back. And I've been listening to it for months. You never said anything. What was I supposed to say? I didn't have proof, but it bothered me because I know you, Danny. You're a good husband and a good father. You don't deserve what she's doing to you. And now? Now I have proof. And I want Sarah to face consequences for what she's done. What kind of consequences? Jenna smiled, and there was something cold in it, the kind that hurt. We spent the next hour going over everything Jenna had learned from her private investigator. She had photos, credit card records, hotel receipts, and phone records going back 8 months. She had evidence of at least 20 different rendezvous between Sarah and Mike. This is enough to destroy her reputation, I said. That's the idea. But it would destroy Mike, too. Mike's already destroyed. He destroyed himself when he decided to cheat on his wife and kids. Jenna was right. Mike had made his choices, and now he had to live with the consequences. But I still felt a twinge of sympathy for him. He'd been manipulated by Sarah just as much as I had. What's your plan? Jenna asked. I'm still working on it, but I want Sarah to know that I know before I do anything else. When? Tonight. That evening, I waited for Sarah to come home from her late night at the office. She walked in at 9:30 p.m., looking tired but satisfied. She'd probably spent the evening with Mike, trying to figure out how to manage the situation now that his divorce was public. Sorry I'm so late, she said. The Johnson case is wearing me out. No problem. I made dinner. It's in the fridge if you want to heat it up. Thanks, but I grabbed something at the office. Another lie. I'd called her office at 8 p.m. and been told she'd left hours earlier. Sarah, we need to talk. Can it wait? I'm exhausted. No, it can't wait. Something in my tone made her look at me more carefully. She set down her purse and briefcase and sat on the couch across from me. What's wrong? I know about Mike. The color drained from her face, but she recovered quickly. What about Mike? I know about the affair, Sarah. I know about the motel rooms, the lies, all of it. She stared at me for a long moment, probably trying to figure out how much I actually knew, and whether she could still bluff her way out. I don't know what you're talking about. Really? You want to keep lying? I'm not lying. I pulled out my phone and showed her one of the photos Jenna had given me. Sarah and Mike walking hand in hand into the Sunset Motor Lodge. Sarah's face crumpled. For just a moment, she looked genuinely devastated, like she was realizing the full scope of what she'd lost. Then, the lawyer in her took over. Where did you get that? Does it matter? It matters if you hired someone to follow me. That could be considered stalking. Even now, even caught red-handed, she was looking for an angle, trying to find a way to make me the bad guy. I didn't hire anyone, Sarah. Jenna gave me the photos. Jenna? Yeah, Jenna Walsh. You remember Jenna? Your best friend whose husband you've been screwing for 8 months? Sarah closed her eyes and took a deep breath. When she opened them again, she had composed herself. Danny, I know how this looks, but it's not what you think. What is it then? It's complicated. Uncomplicate it for me. Mike was going through a rough patch with Jenna. He needed someone to talk to. I was just being a friend who meets him in motel rooms. It only happened a few times. It didn't mean anything. Which part didn't mean anything? The affair or the 8 months of lying to me? Sarah flinched like I'd slapped her. Don't be crude. Crude? You're worried about me being crude? Danny, please. Let me explain. Go ahead. Explain. Sarah took another deep breath, probably organizing her thoughts the same way she organized her legal arguments. I was lonely, she said. You work all the time, we barely talk anymore. I felt like we were just going through the motions. So you decided to sleep with Mike Walsh. It wasn't planned, it just happened. For 8 months. Yes. And you were planning to divorce me. Her eyes widened. Who told you that? Mike did. He also told me about your plan to accuse me of emotional abuse. Sarah's composure finally cracked completely. She started crying. Not the elegant tears of a grieving widow in a movie, but ugly, desperate sobs. Danny, please. I made a mistake, a terrible mistake, but we can work through this. Can we? Yes. We can go to counseling. We can fix this. You mean like you were planning to fix it by divorcing me and taking Emily and the house? I was confused. I wasn't thinking clearly. You seemed pretty clear when you were setting up your exit strategy. Sarah wiped her eyes and looked at me with something approaching her old confidence. What do you want, Danny? Do you want me to grovel? Do you want me to beg for forgiveness? I want you to tell me the truth. About what? About everything. About how long you've been planning to leave me. About what you really think of our marriage. About who you really are. Sarah was quiet for a long time. When she finally spoke, her voice was cold and flat. You want the truth? Fine. The truth is that I outgrew you years ago. The truth is that I got tired of being married to a mechanic who comes home smelling like motor oil and thinks dinner at Applebee's is fine dining. There it is. The truth is that I built a career while you were content to stay exactly where you were 15 years ago. The truth is that I wanted more than this house, this town, this life. And Mike Walsh was more? Mike understood me. He appreciated me. He was married, Sarah. So am I. So are you. Not anymore. Sarah looked at me with surprise. What does that mean? It means I'm filing for divorce. Danny, please, don't make any rash decisions. We can work this out. No, we can't. It's over, Sarah. Think about Emily. I am thinking about Emily. I'm thinking about how she's going to feel when she finds out her mother is a cheater and a liar. You wouldn't. Try me. Sarah stood up and paced to the window, looking out at our quiet street. When she turned back to me, she looked like the lawyer she was, calculating, strategic. If you file for divorce, I'll fight you for everything. The house, custody, alimony, I'll make your life hell. You already have. I mean it, Danny. I'll destroy you in court. With what? Your credibility? With evidence of your emotional abuse, your controlling behavior, your anger issues. Good luck with that. Sarah stared at me, probably trying to figure out why I wasn't intimidated by her threats. The old Danny would have been terrified of losing Emily or the house, but the old Danny was gone. I'm going to stay at a hotel tonight, she said finally. Good idea. She packed a bag and left without another word. I sat alone in our living room, surrounded by 15 years of memories, and felt nothing but relief. Tomorrow, the real work would begin. The next morning, I called a lawyer. Not just any lawyer. I called Patricia Chen, the best divorce attorney in the county and Sarah's biggest professional rival. If Sarah wanted to play hardball, I'd make sure I had the best pitcher on my team. Patricia's office was in a glass tower in Albany, about an hour from Millbrook. She was a small woman in her 50s, with steel gray hair and the kind of confidence that comes from winning battles in courtrooms for 30 years. Mr. Morrison, she said, reviewing the folder of evidence Jenna had given me. This is quite comprehensive. Is it enough? More than enough. Your wife's adultery is well documented, and her partner's divorce filing corroborates the timeline. New York is a no-fault divorce state, but adultery can still impact custody and property division. What about her threats to accuse me of emotional abuse? Patricia smiled coldly. Let her try. We have evidence that she was planning to fabricate abuse claims for strategic advantage. That won't play well with the judge. How long will this take? If she fights it, 6 months to a year. If she's smart and settles quickly, we could have you divorced in 3 months. And custody? Given her documented infidelity and her attempts to manipulate the system, I'd say you have an excellent chance of getting primary custody, especially if your daughter expresses a preference to live with you. I left Patricia's office feeling better than I had in weeks. For the first time since this whole mess started, I felt like I had some control over my situation. But I wasn't done yet. My next stop was Millbrook High School, where I had a long overdue conversation with Emily. I found her in the cafeteria during her lunch period, sitting with a group of friends and scrolling through her phone. Dad, what are you doing here? I need to talk to you, privately. Emily looked embarrassed, but followed me out to the hallway. At 15, she was starting to look more like her mother every day, tall, blonde, with the same sharp intelligence in her eyes. Is everything okay? She asked. No, sweetheart. Everything's not okay. I told Emily about the divorce, about her mother's affair, about the lies and manipulation. I tried to be gentle, to present the facts without editorializing, but there was no way to make the truth sound less devastating. Emily listened in silence, her expression shifting from confusion to hurt to anger. Mom's been cheating on you? Yes. With Mr. Walsh? Yes. That's disgusting. He's married. He has kids. I know. How long has this been going on? About 8 months. Emily was quiet for a long time, processing everything I'd told her. When she finally spoke, her voice was small and hurt. Is this why you and Mom have been acting so weird lately? Partly, yes. I thought it was my fault. I thought maybe I'd done something wrong. Oh, honey, no. This has nothing to do with you. This is between your mother and me. Where is Mom now? She's staying at a hotel. We're going to get divorced, Emily. I'm sorry. Emily started crying then. Not the dramatic tears of a teenager having a meltdown, but the quiet tears of a child whose world had just fallen apart. What's going to happen to me? You're going to be fine. We both love you, and that's not going to change. We'll figure out the custody arrangement, but no matter what happens, you'll always have both of us. I don't want to see Mom right now. You don't have to. Take as much time as you need. Can I stay with you? Of course. That evening, Sarah came by the house to pick up more clothes. Emily was upstairs doing homework, and I was in the kitchen making dinner. How did she take it? Sarah asked. About as well as you'd expect. I want to talk to her. She doesn't want to talk to you. She's my daughter, Danny. She's our daughter. And right now, she's angry and hurt and confused. Give her some space. Sarah looked like she wanted to argue, but she must have seen something in my expression that warned her off. The neighbors are starting to talk, she said instead. Let them talk. This is going to ruin my reputation. You should have thought about that before you started sleeping with Mike Walsh. Danny, please. Can't we handle this quietly? Do we have to air our dirty laundry in public? You mean like you've been doing for months? Telling people I was emotionally abusive and controlling? Sarah flinched. I never said that. Mike told me you did. So did Jenna. I was just venting. I didn't mean it. Sure you did. Sarah packed her bags in silence while I made dinner for Emily and me. As she was leaving, she turned back to me with one last attempt at manipulation. You know this is going to hurt Emily more than it hurts us. Emily will be fine. She's stronger than you think. Is she? Because she's been cutting classes and her grades are slipping. Did you know that? I didn't know that, and Sarah could see it on my face. She's been acting up for weeks, Danny. Staying out late, being secretive about where she's going. I think she's been experimenting with drugs. You're lying. Am I? When's the last time you really talked to her? When's the last time you paid attention to what was going on in her life? Sarah left me standing in the kitchen, doubt creeping into my mind. Was Emily having problems I didn't know about? Had I been so focused on Sarah's betrayal that I'd missed signs that my daughter was struggling? I went upstairs and knocked on Emily's door. Come in. She was lying on her bed with her laptop, supposedly doing homework, but actually watching videos on YouTube. How's school going? Fine. Your grades are okay? Emily's expression shifted slightly. Why? Your mother said you've been having some problems. Mom said that? Yeah. Emily closed her laptop and sat up. Dad, I've missed a few classes. And yeah, my grades aren't great right now. But it's because I've been stressed about you and Mom. I could tell something was wrong, but nobody would tell me what. Are you using drugs? What? No! God, Dad! Is that what Mom told you? She implied it. She's lying. She's been lying about everything else, right? Why would you believe her about this? Emily was right. Sarah had been manipulating me right up until the end, trying to make me doubt myself and question my relationship with my daughter. I'm sorry, sweetheart. I should have known better. It's okay. But Dad, I'm glad you're getting divorced. I know that's a terrible thing to say, but Mom's been different lately. Mean. She's been saying things about you that I knew weren't true. What kind of things? That you don't care about us. That you're holding her back. That she deserves better. So Sarah had been poisoning Emily against me too, setting up her narrative even with our daughter. I'm sorry you had to hear that. I didn't believe it. You're the best dad ever. That night, after Emily went to bed, I sat in my home office and made a list of everything I needed to do. File divorce papers. Meet with Emily's school counselor. Change the locks on the house. Cancel Sarah's credit cards. Transfer money from our joint accounts to my personal account. I was methodical about it, approaching the end of my marriage the same way I approached rebuilding an engine. Step by step, piece by piece, until everything was exactly the way it should be. But there was one more thing I needed to do. Saturday morning, I drove to the Millbrook Community Center, where the annual Harvest Festival was being held. It was the biggest social event of the year, attended by virtually everyone in town. There would be craft booths, food vendors, live music, and plenty of opportunities for gossip. I found Sarah at the lawyer's booth, handing out promotional materials and chatting with potential clients. She was wearing a burgundy dress and her professional smile, playing the role of the successful attorney and pillar of the community. Mike was there too, looking miserable and trying to avoid eye contact with anyone. Jenna was nowhere to be seen. She was probably at home, packing for her new life. I waited until there was a crowd gathered around the lawyer's booth. Then I walked up to Sarah with a manila envelope. "Divorce papers," I said loudly enough for everyone to hear. "You've been served." Sarah's professional smile faltered. "Danny, please." "Not here." "Why not here? This is where you've been building your reputation, right? This is where you've been telling people what a terrible husband I am." The crowd was starting to murmur, sensing drama. Sarah looked around desperately, probably trying to figure out how to minimize the damage. "Can we discuss this privately?" We had 15 years to discuss things privately. You chose to discuss our marriage with Mike Walsh instead. The murmuring got louder. I saw heads turning, people pulling out their phones to record the confrontation. "Danny, you're making a scene." Am I? Or am I just telling the truth for once? I turned to address the crowd directly. In case anyone's wondering, my wife has been having an affair with Mike Walsh for the past 8 months. You know Mike, Jenna Walsh's husband. The same Jenna who's been Sarah's best friend for 10 years. The crowd gasped. I saw shock, disgust, and fascination on the faces around me. Sarah looked like she wanted to disappear. "Danny, stop," she said. "Stop what? Stop telling the truth? Stop letting people know who you really are? Please." But I was just getting started. I pulled out my phone and showed the crowd one of the photos Jenna had given me. "This is my wife and Mike Walsh at the Sunset Motor Lodge 2 weeks ago, while Mike's wife was home taking care of their kids, and while I was working 60-hour weeks to pay for the house my wife was planning to take from me in our divorce." The crowd was completely silent now, hanging on every word. Sarah was crying, but they weren't tears of genuine remorse. They were tears of humiliation and rage. "The best part," I continued, "is that Sarah's been telling people for months that I'm emotionally abusive, that I'm controlling and don't appreciate her. She's been setting up her victim narrative so that when she filed for divorce, everyone would feel sorry for her." I looked directly at Sarah. "How's that working out for you now?" Sarah turned and ran, pushing through the crowd and disappearing into the parking lot. Mike followed her, looking like he wanted to die of embarrassment. I stood there for a moment, surrounded by shocked faces and whispered conversations. Then I walked away, leaving the divorce papers on the table at the lawyer's booth. By Monday morning, everyone in Millbrook knew the truth about Sarah Morrison and Mike Walsh. The story had spread through social media, coffee shops, and beauty salons like wildfire. Sarah's carefully constructed reputation was in ruins. She called me that afternoon, her voice shaking with rage. "You destroyed me." "You destroyed yourself. I just made sure everyone knew about it. I'll never forgive you for this." "I don't want your forgiveness, Sarah. I want you out of my life." "This isn't over." "Yes, it is." And it was. Sarah moved out of Millbrook 2 weeks later, taking a job with a firm in Syracuse where nobody knew about her affair. The divorce was finalized 3 months later, with me getting primary custody of Emily and keeping the house. Mike Walsh lost everything. His marriage, his business, and his reputation. He left town shortly after Sarah did, and I heard he was working for an insurance company in Buffalo under a different name. Jenna got her fresh start. She sold her house and moved to Vermont, where she opened a small bookstore and seemed genuinely happy for the first time in years. Emily thrived. Her grades improved, she made new friends, and she seemed relieved to be free of her mother's manipulation and drama. We talked more, laughed more, and built a stronger relationship than we'd ever had. As for me, I learned that I was capable of things I'd never imagined. I learned that sometimes the only way to win a rigged game is to flip over the table and start fresh. I learned that nice guys don't always finish last. Sometimes they finish exactly where they're supposed to be. 6 months after the divorce was final, I was working late at the shop when Ricky stopped by with a beer and a grin. "You know what I like about you, Danny?" "What's that?" "You're the only guy I know who got revenge on his cheating wife by telling the truth." He was right. I didn't have to lie, cheat, or break any laws. I just had to stop playing by Sarah's rules and start playing by my own. Sometimes the best revenge is simply letting people see who someone really is. And sometimes, when the dust settles and the truth comes out, the good guys actually do win.